Additionally, the webinar we will send out via email, the presentation slide deck, and a link to the webinar. You will also receive a survey link via email once the webinar concludes, and I would like to emphasize that you must respond to the survey as a part of the Sketch credit process. So let me just remind you one more time. In order to get the Sketch credits, you do have to complete the survey. Participants are eligible for Sketch credits after you attend at least 3 webinars that are in the series. The process for obtaining the Sketch credits, you're going to get that survey link once the webinar concludes via email, and you do have to respond to the survey with your PIC number. So one of the questions that we often receive is, what the heck is my PIC and how do I find it? So we will help you with that, but I will tell you that the information can be found on MOEX for those of you who do need that information. The webinar today is to provide guidance and support to our teachers to engage in the evaluation and grow their professional growth process. Much of the information that we're going to provide and share with you today will be a bit of an overview, or what I like to refer to as a toe dip in the content. To implement the strategies, we will require you to follow up collaboratively and action planning at the classroom, within your school, and in the district level. We understand that the participants on today's webinar are likely working with different adopted evaluation models, and that each of these frameworks has identified processes. Therefore, we're going to provide you with some guidance that is vendor agnostic, not specific to any one particular framework. Instead, these are best practices that could be brought into any of the frameworks. So once again, I want to say thank you for joining us today. And as a reminder, you're going to be able to gather the documents, and you'll be able to refer to them as you need to. So a little bit about the Office of Educator Talent, and a little bit about the department as a whole, and about our top 10 and 10 strategies. The Michigan Department of Ed believes that high-quality educator evaluations can support both student learning as well as educator well-being. High-quality evaluations can provide teachers with critical feedback on how they can provide their own practice to impact the lives of students. In addition to facilitating educators' personal pursuits of excellence, systemic improvements to educator evaluations in schools and districts play an essential role in providing targeted professional development and be responsive to the needs of educators. Specifically, the Office of Educator Talent is targeted to reach goal number 3 in the Michigan Top 10 and 10. So a little bit about our focus for today. And I'm not going to read the slide to you, but I do want to just kind of circle back a little bit and remind you about a couple of pieces that we're going to focus in on today with Joe. So we're going to focus in on student growth for the evaluation purposes. And for today's webinar, it was influenced very strongly by feedback and questions that we received from our first webinar. So I do want to give a huge shout out to those of you that are returning in the webinar series. And I want to share with you that we do very much appreciate your time and your information that you share with us, whether that comes in through phone calls, through emails, through the Q&A. We want to say thank you, because that really does help inform our webinar series and provides us with information to grow content and to grow these webinar series and the presentations. Also, we do want to say thank you to those of you who are part of Michigan Department of Ed's Michigan Teacher Leadership Advisory Council. And a little bit more about them in just a minute or two. But we do want to say thank you, because they help inform and guide and talk about what's going on in the field and bring that information forward to us as well. Some common barriers to effective teacher evaluation systems are a lack of time, inconsistent or inauthentic process, unclear or inadequate evaluation criteria, an over-reliance on standardized test scores, teacher resistance or mistrust, unfamiliarity with content and or discipline specific practices. For instance, maybe there might be an area such as special education. Our webinar series is designed to address or attack these barriers by providing you out in the field with information, guidance, deeply rooted in best practice, and support for our teachers and administrators. We'd like you to take a moment to respond to the poll question. Which areas of student growth measurement would you like to see improved in your local context? So thank you for those of you who are participating in our poll question. And it looks like many of you are kind of spread between two, quite honestly. It looks like selecting an assessment that aligns with my teaching is a strong indicator, as well as clear and transparent guidelines for student growth calculation. So I can tell you that my colleague, Brian, will be very happy to see that, and we'll speak to that in a little while. And right now I'd like to kick this off, and we're going to move over to vocabulary terms that are important for student growth measurement. To grow our understanding, I'd like to bring us all back to a common point of entry, and we're going to begin with some glossary terms. And I'd like you to take a moment and take a look at these terms, and I'm not going to read them to you, we're all professionals, but I would like to just take a moment and make sure that you have these as a reference point. We are going to refer to them quite a bit during the course of today. So please make sure you do have these handy, because between Joe and Brian going back and forth a little bit later during the webinar today, you are going to want to reference these. And please understand, some of you out in the field may be at different points of understanding, so this does not mean that we're trying to diminish your growth or understanding, but we do want to build a level playing field, so please just have this handy a little bit later.
Hello everyone, this is Joe Priest providing you some information here. I do want to just make one quick note. You probably noticed that the documents that were available for download disappeared from the bottom of your page. We will pop those up again at the end so you can download those again, but we do try to clear off some of the information off the slides or off the presentation just to give you a little less to look at. So in Michigan, really the legislation around teacher evaluation really started gaining momentum in 2009. But the idea of teacher evaluation is not new. Even in the early beginnings of schools in the United States, teachers were held to some set of standards. It looks much different than it does today, but in those earliest days of teachers in schools in the United States, community members evaluated teachers on the teacher's moral character, their community and religious mores, and the extent to which they applied discipline and adhered to the community curriculum. Now, clearly the expectations have changed quite a bit and rapidly over the last few years, leaving many educators not sure of the purpose and value of the evaluation systems. So we're going to try to set the table for you here a little bit and help understand what the overall purpose of evaluation is. The Michigan Department of Education, Office of Educator Talent, our research unit, has contracted with some different providers, Northern Michigan University, Marzano Research, and Ray Taylor and Associates, to survey Michigan educators about the implementation of our educator evaluation systems, with the goal of identifying the barriers that are out there and also identifying some best practices for us to target those barriers. This slide is actually built on some of the survey responses from the NMU research project. This survey reached out and received responses from over 1,700 educators, almost 1,300 of them teachers, across Michigan's 56 intermediate school districts. So this slide talks about one question that all those survey respondents responded to, which was what should, or what ideally, should the purpose of teacher evaluation be in Michigan? And you can see there's a lot of alignment there between administrators and teachers. In fact, 96% of those administrators there cited student growth and learning, professional development, and improved instruction as the main reasons for, or what the ideal purpose of an evaluation system should be. Teachers, very similar. 97% of those teachers cited those same areas. Evaluation should be to support student growth. It should support professional development. It should help my instruction improve. So we're very much in alignment there. Now, a second question was also asked, and it was, what is the actual purpose of teacher evaluation in Michigan? So the one on the slide is the ideal, and then the second question is the actual. And the responses from teachers and administrators demonstrated some different perspectives on the actual implementation of these systems. About 19% of the administrators said that the purpose for this evaluation was compliance. And about 30% of teachers stated that same reason. So we have a large chunk of our field that feel as if the compliance is the main objective or the actual purpose of evaluation. About 70% of the administrators stated that there was still, the actual purpose was still around teaching and learning, while only about 40% of our teachers that responded said that the evaluation system was about improving teaching and learning. So here at the Michigan Department of Education, we believe that the legislative updates that have happened, especially in 2015, have really increased the flexibility and options for districts to make some local control decisions, and really allows districts to build evaluations and student growth systems that are focused on feedback and professional development. And this can and is being done across schools and districts in our state. So when we talk about the purpose of educator evaluation, we do want to hone in on evaluation as a powerful opportunity to improve student learning. And we know we can do this by improving the skills and practices of our teachers. When done well, these high-quality feedback systems honor and recognize the effective practices that are happening and help educators see where there's areas of continued growth. Our guidance today focuses really on the teacher aspect of the eval practices, but I want you all to know that we do also provide ongoing guidance to administrators to support quality feedback, and we have a webinar series we're very excited to kick off for them next month to align with the directions we're giving to teachers. So why should I invest time and energy into this measuring of student growth? Sometimes the teacher evaluation systems and activities that go along with them can feel like an add-on, can feel like something extraneous outside of your normal responsibilities. So what we're hoping to do is to help you connect the work to what is most valuable and important in your day-to-day assignments. Many educators approach the student growth topic like a science experiment. Teachers gather information about their students. They set hypotheses about strategies and approaches that will have a positive effect on learning. They take measurements throughout the process. And finally, they measure and communicate the results. Now, while we don't ask teachers to make a board and display it in the cafeteria on science fair night, you can see many connections there between those two processes. Many educators also make connections between student growth and their own form of action research. That inquiry-based process that focuses on problem solving in the classroom level and really focuses on devising effective teaching strategies to connect with the student needs. So this work around student growth can be connected and supportive to our everyday efforts. It's just getting our mindset and our actions aligned there. So again, the source of the information on this slide is back to that NMU survey. I wanted to share a few responses from Michigan teachers in regards to evaluating student growth as part of the educator evaluation. As you can see from these quotes, there's teachers out there that are seeing the benefits of setting goals, and there's an increasing shift in the teaching field to focus on learning outcomes. And also there's a sense out there that students are benefiting from an increasing understanding of what their learning targets are and what the goals are for them to achieve. So our question is, how can focusing on setting goals and measuring outcomes actually improve student learning? It's a diagram here from the Children's Literacy Initiative that kind of draws the connection between data analysis and making instructional decisions. Research notes the value of teachers setting academic goals for students. As noted in the What Works Clearinghouse, teacher goal setting reinforces best teaching practices. Setting goals for students, using data to assess student progress, and adjusting instruction based on that progress all are characteristics of good teaching practice. Measuring student growth can formalize good teaching by creating opportunities for conversations between educators and their evaluators, discussing student results, which can ultimately improve the feedback as well as teacher practice to support student learning. Also, goal setting defines for teachers how they can measure and celebrate their professional success. These kind of goals allow us as teachers to set a target of where we want to go and also to measure our progress as we get there. And ultimately, goal setting can reinforce a growth mindset, one of continuous improvement, focused on supporting more students to make more progress more of the time. We do have another poll question here for you. So I've given you some reasons about why it might be a worthwhile pursuit to invest time and energy into your measuring student growth and educator evaluation processes. But talk to me or respond in the poll here. Which of these reasons is most motivating to you to invest time and energy in that portion of your evaluation? Pretty strong response there. Continue responding if you haven't already. Looks like a majority of people in the group really see that there's a connection between teacher goal setting and the impact that has on student learning. And as we go out and do talks around the state around student growth, we really do try to hammer that point home, that there is a research backing that says teachers looking at their student performance and setting goals based on their student needs, tracking those goals, and celebrating them when they get there is really something that is impactful in our classrooms.
Let's make sure that you're up to date. What I'd like to start with is we field questions daily from educators across our state, and we want to make sure that we are connected to both not only the 2009 and 2011 expectations, but some things that are currently going on regarding teacher evaluation and using student growth. So to kind of walk you back with a historical perspective, let's first take a look at 2009. So we had some requirements regarding student growth in our teacher evaluation. And when you take a look at the slide there, you see that student growth was first used as a significant factor. Moving forward, we had PA 102 in 2011, which provided some clarity around using assessments, required national, state, and local assessments, which were introduced, the progressive increase in the value of student growth within teacher evaluations. For the annual year-end evaluation for 2013-2014 school year, that number went to 25% of the annual year-end evaluation, which would have been based on student growth and the assessment data. Moving forward, 40% was the number given for the 2014-2015 school year, and at least 50% for the 15-16 school year. In 2015, PA 173 was enacted and gave us current requirements, removing the national assessment requirement and setting the value of our student growth for evaluation to 40% beginning in the 18-19 school year. So what grades and subjects will have state data available to measure student growth? It's a common question, and we want to provide some clarity around that. It's a little bit of a misnomer, and so we want to take a minute and just kind of walk you through that. If state testing data is required, how does that affect teachers differently based on the grade and subjects that they teach? Taking a look here at the requirements, another representation to illustrate the shift in requirements for the 18-19 school year, please notice that half of the 40% is designated to come from state growth data for tested grades and subjects. We interpret that to mean that grades 4 through 8 in ELA and math will have state growth and student growth percentile data. This guidance does not recommend attributing student growth scores to third grade, being the first year of testing, 7th and 8th grade, science or social studies, or SAT for those of you in high school because of the multiple year gap between those assessment pieces. For other grades and subjects, the entire 40% could be based on local data sources to measure student growth. So for those teachers throughout our state, assessments other than MSTEP will need to be discussed or to come to consensus. We recommend selecting an assessment for teacher evaluation that is very close to the instruction and content of the teacher that is being evaluated.
So we know that we have some flexibility and some decisions that we can make at the local level. So really, what options are available to districts and teachers? We saw from our poll question earlier that selecting an appropriate assessment as well as having clarity around how those student growth scores are calculated is a major point of motivation and something we still need to figure out in our schools. I have a teacher quote here from the NMU surveys demonstrating the challenges and frustrations that some of you might also be feeling. And that's sometimes teachers can have a great deal of frustration when our student growth data that's included in our evaluations might be questionable or maybe limited connection to the day-to-day work with the students that we do. So again, our guidance from MDE is to use assessments that can be best attributed to that individual teacher. So with that said, what options are available to measure the student growth portion of the evaluation? So quite often the first question that we get as we work on student growth models is, what assessment should we use? Districts, again, have that option to select the assessments used for their student growth measurement. Here's some information from our NMU survey that gives you a picture of the current practice across our state and some options that are already currently in use. You can see of those about 1,700 responses that we got. There's some percentages there, some different assessments that are used for student growth evaluation. You can see the NWEA assessment is a frequent one, as well as many schools and districts are using pre-post test models to help measure growth, as well as some other assessments listed there. So that might start to pique your interest a little bit here. You're making connections. Some of those are already in place in your district. Some of those you're going to have more questions about. But understand there's a variety of assessments that can be used and are being used to measure student growth for your evaluations. Okay, so once you pick that assessment, you're going to need a way to track the progress of students to measure their growth. MDE provides guidance around a process that's specifically mentioned in legislation as an option. Again, an option but not a requirement. So the option mentioned there is student learning objectives, often called SLOW. SLOW is an option that's available for districts that supports teacher leadership and autonomy. It's a way for teachers to set long-term academic goals. And those are set by the teachers or the teacher teams. And they're designed to monitor student progress towards those goals and really, really help connect the teacher's impact on student learning with their evaluation. So within our SLOW process or within any student growth process, we'll be setting growth targets. So a growth target focuses on the expected learning at the end of the instructional period. So growth targets can and should be developed based on students' beginning knowledge level. So I'm saying that to get to the idea that students will have different growth targets depending on their beginning understanding. To help set accurate goals, we can consider the progress shown by similar performing students in the previous year or years. So my students who start the year with a pre-test score of 20% we'll have growth goals that are set based on the performance of last year's students that started the year with a similar score. In a few minutes, we're going to show you an MDE created resource to help you set these goals. And also on the slide, we have an example of a student learning objective growth target. You can see that we're in that example there, we're differentiating the targets based on the students' beginning scores or what percentile they fell within our classrooms. And then we'll be using that growth target to measure our progress throughout the year. So MDE supports the SLO approach for several reasons, mostly because there's just a lot of effective teaching practices that are built in within the SLO process. The academic goal setting for students involves multiple effective practices, including really aligning the instruction and the assessment to standards, prioritizing core standards, and setting differentiated goals for students based on their academic readiness and needs. Those are all strengths of the SLO process. To support the field, we, as an office, the Office of Educator Talent, has worked in collaboration with professional organizations across our state, including our teacher education associations and administrative professional organizations, to create a collaborative opportunity to bring decision makers and stakeholders together to review and develop their district student growth models. We at MDE believe that teachers and teacher teams are a key component of that academic goal setting and student growth measurement process, and we feel like with the support of administration and other stakeholders, these processes can really have a chance to make a difference for student learning. So we planned a three-session workshop. We've already completed session 1 at our regional locations. We were in we had regions in the UP in northern Michigan and southwest Michigan, Grand Rapids, Saginaw, Metro Detroit. Our office traveled to all those places and met with teacher teams and school teams to help them work on their student growth models. We hope to have our next set of dates out for sessions 2 and 3 very quickly, and we also hope to have all the districts that we started participating with continue on with us and also create an opportunity for new districts to join. And if you're serious about improving or addressing the student growth model in your district, please, please, please talk to your education association, talk to your administration about this workshop as a way to bring people together from different levels of stakeholder groups and to build a collaborative system that not only is supportive of our teachers, but also of our students and administrators. And there is a link there at the bottom of that page where you can find out some more information. We'll update that link as well with the new dates as soon as we have those.
So in your current role, how can you advocate for student growth? An approach that is both fair and transparent. In the Northern Michigan University survey that they conducted of Michigan teachers, the majority of our teachers felt that the system, including the process that was used, the rubric, and the required data components were not flexible enough or allowed them to be personalized. The teachers stated that the Educator evaluation tool seemed to reflect a focus on the general education setting, making it challenging for those teachers in specials areas such as art, music, physical education, early childhood and kindergarten teachers, school counselors, those that were in vocational or career and tech ed settings, interventionists, and special education teachers, those that were housed in categorical, resource room, teacher consultants, and RESA program teachers, to receive effective and critical feedback from the evaluation process. Those of you who are in those current settings that I just listed, if this is your reality, understand that districts have the option to select the assessments used for teacher evaluation. So for allowing teacher autonomy within teacher evaluations, the slide that you see before you comes from the National Survey of Teachers and Principals. You'll see above on the slide how teachers have considerable input around standards, curriculum, professional development options, perhaps sitting in on hiring processes, than they do in regards to teacher evaluation practices. We believe that the measurement of student growth for teacher evaluation presents a major opportunity for teachers here in the state to be involved in a meaningful way to support student learning and teacher professional growth. Our question for teachers here is, how can teacher leaders collaborate, support one another, and effectively communicate to drive the process for measuring student growth within your local context? Perhaps it could be by forming your own professional learning community, conduct a book study, through teacher leadership opportunities, your own professional networking. What can you do to create an opportunity through the teacher evaluation process?
So as we enter into this world of student growth, we know that there's much that we need to know about assessment. While there's whole master's degrees programs and graduate studies on assessment, we're clearly not going to go to that depth in our 60-minute webinar today, but we do want to give you some information and some content that we think will support your understanding and make it more allowable for you to take action on some of the things that we're talking to you about today. So looking at some different definitions of different types of assessments, in addition to knowing the types of assessments, you can increase your knowledge by conducting a more formal assessment inventory. And we actually did have an assessment inventory template. That's one of the documents that are available for download today. And going through a team process to inventory your current assessments that are being used within your district, really closely scrutinizing those assessments around ideas about who's the requiring entity? Why are we conducting this assessment? What's the purpose for this assessment? What are we trying to get out of it? What's our actual use of this assessment information? How closely is this assessment? Sorry about that. I lost my microphone there for a second, but I'm back with you. So in addition to evaluating assessments for their standards alignment, also checking in with teachers to talk about their perception of the value of that assessment. We know teachers will invest more time and energy into the assessments that they feel are valuable and meaningful to their work. So this type of analysis can help select an assessment for teacher evaluation and possibly eliminate some assessments that are no longer serving an important purpose in your district. So here's another question that we often get from teachers. A lot of times as teachers, we can feel like we're swimming in available data. So the questions we get from teachers in the field is, what do I do with all this data? What's it telling me? And how can I interpret it to actually take action on it to make things better for my students? So with the amount of data available, along with the many initiatives that are facing our teachers and their schools, it's not surprised that sometimes our data practice involves some missteps or some malpractices. Here's a quote from a DataWise book that points to a common practice, making quick judgments based on a quick review of data. And the problem with this practice is it can often lead us as educators to getting stuck. We get in a pattern of repeating some practice that may not support the change that we're trying to create, and it can also feed into a real frustration of over lack of results if we're not getting the results that we're hoping for. We'd like to provide you some guidance that will allow you to use data in a way that is helpful to your day-to-day practice, as well as serve as evidence for your evaluation purposes. So in an educational leadership article called Developing Data Mentors by Nichols and Singer, the authors say that gathering student assessment data is not enough. And I think as educators, we know that we're doing plenty of gathering of student assessment data. But administrators and teachers must learn to analyze the data and apply this information in the classroom. So there are many resources available, books, research, etc., that can support your data awareness and analysis. But ultimately, your purpose in analyzing data is to determine what your students have learned, what they need to learn, and how you need to plan instruction to ensure that they all do learn. Starting with a clear goal in mind, It's kind of what that first idea is about on the slide. Developing an educational question that focuses on student learning and that's linked to standards. When we have this starting point, it can allow the rest of the work to kind of unfold underneath it. But starting with that clear goal in mind, aligning that goal with an assessment that's valued by teachers, and checking progress along the ways are really the practices that make effective data use in the classroom. And these steps also align very well with the goal setting and professional learning cycles of the evaluation frameworks. So to help frame the educational question or big idea that we're searching for as we look at data, the mantra that we provide in our workshops goes a little bit like this. As a teacher at the end of the semester or the year, I know that I am successful when my students can blank. What goes in that blank should be aligned to standards and provide the direction for teachers to prioritize curriculum assessments to help achieve that goal. If what goes in that blank is not aligned to standards, then we better analyze what that's aligned to. We want to emphasize the importance of collaboration and teamwork as you work through your data sets, as you work through this set of questions, when answering all these important questions. And a real strength comes from collaborating with similar content peers that are teaching similar subjects as yourself as you're working through this set of questions. So we've talked about different types of assessments and how to select an assessment that matches your educational question or your overall goal and standards that you're focusing on. So let's talk now about how I can set goals for my students as a way to measure the effectiveness of my teaching. So I have a screenshot here for you from our Michigan Department of Education student growth measurement tool. And the critical part here, and then Brian's going to give you a closer overview in a minute here, but what I want you to see from this screen is that we've identified each student's starting point or current level of understanding, and that's what we've entered as a pre-test score here. Then we can set some goals for what we can expect that students to learn and grow before the next assessment. And what this tool really allows us to do is it allows you to enter your student pre-test data, track their performance, and it really, really becomes powerful if you have multiple years of data. You can enter the previous year's pre and post-test scores, and the tool will do the calculations for you in the background to set the differentiated goals for each of your students. So if you look at the slide there, Jane, she had a pre-test score of 22, and by where she fell in comparison with her peers from the previous year, that set up a growth expectation for her of about 35 points throughout the year. And so on the post-test, we would consider Jane's to have shown significant or appropriate growth if she scores higher than that expected post-test score. And you can see for Jane, it's 57%. So, and then we can also enter their post-test scores at the end of the semester or the end of the academic year. Jane here scored a 78%, so you can see that she's well above the 57 goal for her, so her objective was met. So, but you can see as you look down the page, Jane and John have similar, or actually the exact same target score because their post scores were pretty similar. But if you look down at Peter and John, who scored higher than Jane and John Doe, their growth targets were a little bit less because they essentially had less room to grow. So what we have here is a tool that allows us to use multiple years of assessment data and set differentiated goals for our students based on where their starting point is. I'm going to give Brian a chance to talk to you a little bit here and talk to you about how you can then use this tool to help you manage, track, and calculate your student growth data.
Hello, everybody. Thanks for allowing us this opportunity. I'd like to also point out, too, that we have a Q&A section, and I would love to capture questions or comments from the field about student growth, about and the content that we're showing, about the barriers and how you're getting around barriers. I would love to see our teachers be able to post to this Q&A questions that they have. We have consultants here that have the ability to answer the questions And the questions that you answer, or the questions that you might ask, really might benefit a lot of other people within the field. So just wanted to, again, kind of point that out. So Joe gave a pretty good demonstration already, and we don't have a whole lot of time. Um, uh, I could talk for an hour just about the tool. So just to kind of give you a broad overview, the tool really works well if you have prior year assessment scores. There are success criteria that are available using a proficiency score, a group effect size score, or tiered growth projections if prior year scores aren't available. But really the primary utility of this tool is to use teacher's own or grade level's own pre-test and post-test scores from previous years. So you copy and paste in previous years from either previous year or from the past 2 previous years to calculate student growth scores. And by copying and pasting those previous year scores, it creates differentiated score ranges. So using the teacher's own, so not comparing results against Texas or East Grand Rapids, but against the teacher's student's own performance from previous years with this same assessment. Students scored between, on the pretest score, students who were between the 1st and 20th percentile scored between a raw score of 15 and 33. From the 21st to 40th, 33 to 47. So it creates these differentiated bins. And then as we can put in student scores, it will automatically provide you with a score that you can be expected within, depending on how students have scored on this assessment for this teacher or teacher team in the past. So then, as you can see here, whether a student scores below or above the expected post-test scores will determine whether or not they have met or not met their objective. Then what the tool does then is automatically calculate the number of students who have met the SLO, the number of students the number of students who were included within your SLO, the number of students who have either met or exceeded the target, and the percent of students who have met. So then you can set, using this set success criteria here, you can determine what is a 4 rating, what's a 3 rating, what's a 2 rating, depending on the percent of students who have met prior year average scores for the differentiated bins. So as you can see here, I changed that success criteria to 60. That created a score, a rating score of 4. So you would set these probably at the district level so that you have teachers' own unique data and this from predicted scores from their own students. So you have a lot of autonomy there, but you can also introduce a lot of comparability within your procedures because you can set those success criteria at a district or building level by making these decisions so that everybody is evaluated upon the same procedure. So this provides this balance of autonomy with comparability so that you have transparent procedure for how student rating scores are calculated so that everybody can understand exactly how a student growth rating score is determined. So with that, I'll turn this back over, and if you have any questions about the tool, you can use the Q&A. We also do provide a lot of guidance within those student growth workshops and a lot of other webinars and professional learning opportunities. So I'll hand it back over to Joe.
Okay, thank you everybody. We're entering our last few minutes here of our webinar. We want to thank you for sticking with us up to this point. We know we've thrown a lot of information at you here, and I hope some of it is stuck, but what we've really tried to do is give you some knowledge and understandings that could help you devise a classroom level system to measure student growth, but also we're also trying to push teachers to embrace this process, to take ownership, and to work with the teachers and the education associations and the administrators in your school to come together to really improve your student growth system regardless of whatever level of implementation you're at. So we hope that some of the information we gave you today piques your interest, encourage you to study further, but most importantly, supports collaboration between teachers and administrations to build systems that are really effective for everybody that's involved. So, wow, we talked a lot about stakeholder groups. Let's talk real quickly about students. How do I involve students in this process? This is an important question that came to us from our Michigan Teacher Leadership Advisory Council that we thought was a really good opportunity here to point out another research-based practice. So if you are working, depending on the evaluation model that you're working on, the title of this slide, Tracking Student Progress, will be very familiar. There's a lot of research about the positive effect of having students keep track of their own progress toward learning goals. It allows for powerful discussions between teachers and students, and allows teachers to discuss progress with students regarding their learning goal. Also, this type of tracking system allows teachers to better communicate with parents regarding their students' progress in specific areas. And I want you to take a look at the chart that's on the page there. You can see that there's some different points in time where teachers or students are working together to enter the current level of student understanding. There's also spots for students to reflect on their progress. And we know that this approach has a positive effect on student learning. So we're going to also help you make a connection here to the teacher goal setting process. When teachers set a goal, reflect and receive feedback on their progress towards that goal, research suggests that these processes also have a positive effect on student learning as well as teacher learning and professional development. So in our schools, if we dedicate time for students to set goals and track their progress towards those, it helps student learning. And if we embrace the process of teacher goal setting and checking the progress and getting feedback, that improves student learning and professional growth. So, we've talked about assessment, we've talked about the slow process, we've talked about tracking, we've talked about setting differentiated goals. So, where are you going to take action first? This webinar, it's 5 o'clock. I hope that your day is ending, that you're going home to choose your preferred activity for the evening. But when you get back to work tomorrow or the next day, where are you going to take action? Please respond to not only feed our interest, but also those of the participants on the call with you. A lot of people are interested in the slow tools and templates. We've got some of those available for download here that you'll see in just a second. Those are all also publicly available on our MDE website, michigan.gov/MDE-edevals is our homepage where we keep all of our good stuff, and we're going to have that list of resources here for you in a second too. But it looks like, again, really and I see that there's a lot of interest in the slow tools and templates. That's what's going to allow you to set the goals for your students and also keep track of your progress and really also honor and recognize and celebrate the progress that teachers are able to create within their students.
As Joe mentioned, our time is drawing to a close, but we do want to take this opportunity to again say thank you very much for joining us, but we do want to put in a quick reminder about upcoming teacher webinar series. If you haven't had an opportunity to register for the upcoming events, we know the holidays are around the corner and that becomes a very busy time for you with your report cards coming, holiday obligations. So please take an opportunity now to register for the January, February, March, and April sessions. Those of you who may be interested in the Administrator webinar series, that is kicking off on December 1st, so please consider joining both myself and Joe for that opportunity. Also, we just want to say thank you for joining us today. It was our pleasure to share this content with you. We hope that you did find the content not only informative, but an opportunity to grow your understanding. We do have a number of items available for download for you, so please take an opportunity to look those over. Please remember this is a chance for you to continue to grow and pursue other professional learning opportunities. Consider those opportunities to grow the professional learning community option and continue networking and see what you can do to empower yourself through this process. Remember, we are here to support you. We are not a compliance office, so if you do have questions, right now on your screen you have a number of telephone options, email options, and again, we still have the Q&A up. So if there are some questions that you have that are kind of sticking out that you want to kind of have answered right now, we are available for you here. So the consultants here, again, are very supportive, and we are not a compliance office, so please just let us know what we can do to help. That is our number one thing that we want to do. And again, thank you for joining us. It was our pleasure, and we wish you a wonderful evening, and thank you very much.